Hi everybody, welcome to Intellectually Speaking. I'm Dr. Steve Petteruti from Intellectual Medicine. Welcome to today's show. We're going to be talking today about the contrast between intellectual medicine, intellectual life, and what I call petrified thought. This has seeped into our political discourse. It's become a part of our medical environment. It's become really an element that we need to reflect upon in our own lives. Are we really open to new thought, new ideas? Would we respond to new facts and information that challenge our previously held notions in a manner that would make us pause and reconsider? You know, too often it's considered a liability when in politics someone changes their mind. Oh, he's a flip-flopper. Oh, Trump believed in one thing, now he believes in another. Isn't that awful? Oh, that might be great. The same holds true for medicine. And before we're done today, we're going to be talking about chronic Lyme. It's that time of year where these issues become paramount. The epicenter for Lyme disease is really right here in our backyard in southern New England, but it's now become a nationwide scourge. We need to talk about that and how it relates to petrified thought. You want to give your doctor a seizure? Tell him or her that you think you might have chronic Lyme and watch his head start spinning. We'll talk about why that happens and what you can do about it. Here's another thing that will give your doctor a seizure, unless they're enlightened or at least open-minded. That is, tell them you're thinking of doing chelation therapy to help your circulation and get rid of toxic lead. If they're really honest, they'll say, I don't know nothing about no chelation. If there are victims of petrified thought, they'll tell you, my goodness, that's quackery. Quackery in the hearts and minds of many of my colleagues in mainstream medicine is defined by something they don't know about, not whether or not it actually has merit. Now, all of these dynamics connect, as you guys know. Politics, philosophy, medicine, and health, you can't separate them. They merge together. So let's get to it. Now we're talking about petrified thought, preconceived notions. This idea that everybody needs to have equality, that income needs to be more equal, says who? Freedom, ladies and gentlemen, begets inequality. Inequality of outcomes. The real issue at hand economically, because economics connects to health, it's not whether or not there's a 1%. It's not even how much money the 1% has. Let me ask you this. If somebody in Hollywood right now is a zillionaire, but you've got a nice home, couple of cars in the garage, good cash flow, why do we care if somebody else is getting crazy money if they're productive in the pursuit of that money in a way that generates economic benefit? It's different if they're stealing it. It's different if it's an entitlement. Now, some in the political field want to make college free. They want to make it an entitlement. Elizabeth Warren, Senator Warren, wants to erase all collegiate debt. Just go on, $1.3 trillion, here we go, just erase it. Why? What about the people that loaned the money to those individuals? There's a better remedy for this. And part of that remedy is let's stop amplifying the merit of college. The idea that the holy grail of American success is getting junior into some dorky college is nonsense. Statistically, it's true. People that go to college make more money on average than people who don't. But wait a minute. Those stats are grotesquely skewed. Remember that 1%? Right? They make crazy money, don't they? They went to college. Back their money out of that equation and it gets pretty even. So this week at my house, I had a gentleman come by. He works a regular job, 9 to 5 or 7 to 3 really. And he hustles on the side. And he came to my house because he wants to work doing landscaping that I need done. He's a young man with grit, with determination, with a work ethic, with a strong back, a strong mind, and he's paying taxes. And ain't nobody giving him loan forgiveness for the pickup truck he uses to earn his income. Now think about that for a moment. Who's contributing more to our society right now? My guy with his pickup truck or some kid playing hacky sack at a 4-year college studying sociology? And ironically, pickup truck man is paying taxes that go to subsidize the welfare student on the other side of this equation. It ain't fair. I also had someone out to my house this week from the Geek Squad. These are guys from Best Buy that come and, well, they taught me how to turn on my TV. I couldn't turn it up, I couldn't turn it on. Just give me some rabbit ears and 3 switches and I'll be happy. That's a whole nother story. Actually, it's a good example of me being petrified. I gotta learn new skills. So anyhow, here he is, a Geek Squad guy. Don't worry, I'll get to Lyme disease and heart disease in a minute. It's really important. Stay with me. Geek Squad guy, and I asked him, how do you get to be a Geek Squatter? Well, you start out in an apprentice-like program. You don't need any particular training or background. You just need intelligence, work ethic, show up to work every day, sober, ready to rock, ready to learn, and you're going to do okay in America, people. So I asked him then, do they have training for that? Can you go to school or college for it? He said, well, you can, but by the time you graduate 3 years later, the information is old. So here we have the politicians feathering the nest by giving away money. We're going to make the economy boom by flooding the market with a bunch of liberal arts graduates. Show me the proof. It's not there. Let's make high school matter. Let's make that great. Never mind squandering money, subsidizing half-baked pursuit of higher education that 40% of the kids can't benefit from anyhow because they don't have the right stuff. And we know that because they're not graduating. And they're walking away with debt without degrees. But back to my Geek Squad guy. These are hustling guys. He's paying taxes that are going to subsidize welfare kitty. So let's go to another problem. Medicare for Medicaid, Medicare. Let's get these separated. They get confusing. In America now, some politicians are advocating Medicare for all. More power for the government, less freedom for you. Health care, is that a right? Let me ask you this. How about food? You don't have food on your table, your health's not going to be so good. So is food a right? Should everybody be fed? Hell yes, everybody should be fed. We're America. People shouldn't starve. But time out. It doesn't mean that everybody gets to eat the same. Food inequality is a consequence of freedom. Some people afford steak, some people afford chicken, and some people eat beans and rice. They're all fed. Now we've got this ridiculous notion that food stamps, SNAP as it's called, it pays for Fritos and Coca-Cola, junk food. My remedy is simple. I would do away with the SNAP program and I would make staple foods free to every American. Think about that for a moment. What works in America is when everybody gets a benefit. And if you're broke, that can happen suddenly. Instead of having to go through a bureaucracy so you can beg for your food stamps, how about this? Chicken, rice, maybe a couple of vegetables, potatoes are staple foods. You can get government-issued staple foods. I'd expand that list. Maybe there's 15, maybe 20 of them. Exemptions for religious or medical reasons like gluten intolerance or kosher meals. Staple foods. You just pull up your pickup truck to your local food distribution warehouse and you don't have to show any ID. You just get free food. What would happen is people would take advantage of that who are desperate and need it. I'm not going to the food warehouse to pick up food. However, many people would because they're going to go through cycles of stress, food stress. And that can happen suddenly before you can acquire your food stamps. There would be no Coca-Cola, there would be no chocolate chip cookies at the food warehouse. We need to stop subsidizing crap eating for poor people, right? So another necessity is housing. Without food and shelter, your health insurance is subordinate to that. So if food and shelter are not nationalized like they want to do with health insurance. By the way, you guys know you don't have health insurance, you have sick insurance. I say no Medicare for everybody. The vast majority of Americans are currently insured and kind of like the fact that they've got that coverage. I have insurance right now. I survived Obamacare when I lost it, and I reacquired something more recently that I'm happy with. It's Liberty Direct. I don't mind sharing that with you. You can Google them. Great program. So I've got insurance. Most of you have it. What if you don't? What if you're broke? What if you lose your job and things happen suddenly? It's called Medicaid. It's like food stamps for health insurance. Medicaid should be made readily available. That's our safety net. Think about the term safety net. A safety net prevents you from calamity, but is not terribly comfortable. And it shouldn't be. A safety net should be a little uncomfortable so that it motivates you to want to get the hell out of the safety net and get into a higher level of living. And this is the beauty of inequality. This is the beauty of free markets. This is the antithesis of socialism, where you've got a society with a high and a low and a lot of steps in between. So you can move up those steps. Every time you make money, when you go from being unemployed to getting a job, your life should get better. You shouldn't lose benefits that corrode your quality of life. Unfortunately, that's not the way we're structured. Look at France. How's it going over there? Socialism, not working so great. As Margaret Thatcher famously said, socialists eventually run out of spending other people's money. And that's happened in France. And the gap between rich and poor is too big, and there aren't enough steps in between. The same problem has occurred in totalitarian states like the Soviet Union. We're Americans, we like our freedom. What else can I regale you with today? So I'm against college welfare. In Rhode Island, my home state, we now have petrification of future economic calamity. Every town in Rhode Island is under financial duress. And yet, our state government has passed legislation that expands overtime for firefighters against any capacity of towns to negotiate that benefit. Now they're expanding contracts for municipal unions that will make them lifetime contracts that can't be renegotiated. Think about that. You negotiate a contract in 2019, it's 2029, and the entire form, foundation, and income of your town has changed, but you can't change the contract. It would be against the law of Rhode Island. Currently, the city of Warwick, even if they max out their property tax increases, faces a $70 million deficit. With maximum increases, that's before these other benefits go into place. Politicians like to play free and loose with other people's money. The state house in Rhode Island, the Democrats in particular, are playing free and loose with future revenue, just so they can appease their politically powerful colleagues and special interests. This makes me a little bit unwell. It makes me feel like I've got chronic Lyme. These things all connect: financial well-being, political well-being, petrification of thought. So we'll get to the Lyme, we'll get to the chelation I mentioned before. So I have a patient of mine, came to me, and he has proven heart disease with blockages in his arteries. He's having irregular heart rhythms. We did modifications at Intellectual Medicine, nutritional changes, use of supplements, including last week's favorite supplement that we have called Cardio Power, which is L-citrulline, a precursor to nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide in the bloodstream opens up arteries and soothes the endothelium, lining of arteries. So L-citrulline, or Cardio Power as we have it here, one of my favorite supplements. So we're doing these things for him, put him on hormone therapy, start him on an aggressive regimen of chelation. Chelation is an intravenous mix of vitamins along with calcium or disodium EDTA, which is a substance that has been used to remove toxic heavy metals from the body, like lead. Lead has been correlated with coronary artery disease, blocked arteries, hypertension, cognitive decline. This mix called chelation has been used for decades by doctors like me. Progressive, functional, intellectually based doctors willing to expand the bounds of our traditional practice. And patients have benefited. And for decades, orthodox mainstream colleagues have been saying, that's quackery, you guys are quacks, the patients are nuts, this needs to stop. Well, they did a big study. It was called the Trial to Assess Chelation Therapy, TACT, the TACT trial. Multi-centered, placebo-controlled, funded by the National Institute of Health, so completely impartial. The conclusion of that study was that chelation actually worked. The people who received the therapy had fewer heart attacks, strokes, and less death, and no complications. A pretty damn good outcome, wouldn't you say? It was one of the best outcomes ever recorded for any intervention in cardiac annals. Better than many statin drug results. That's hard to say. They weren't direct comparisons, but suffice it to say the results were very impressive. You've never heard about it unless you're a follower of intellectual medicine because it got buried. The result was published in a major journal, but it should have been on the cover of Time magazine. It should have been instantly offered to everybody with heart disease, especially diabetics. Listen, people, if you're a diabetic and you're not chelating right now, you're missing the boat. Intravenous chelation had a profound benefit to the people with diabetes. So back to my guy. Comes to see us. We're doing chelation. He's getting the intravenous therapy. He's feeling great. His energy's improving. He goes back to cardiology. They want to do a procedure on him, but before they do it, they said, we know you have blocked arteries. You need a few stents. They go in and cath him. They couldn't put any stents in. Why not? Because his arteries had magically opened. And it's funny, because he's kind of smiling. After they were done with the procedure, they said, well, sir, we didn't see any blockage. We don't know how that, we have no explanation for that because they were there and now they're gone. And he said, well, you know, and this is how he started, he tells the story, it's great. I've been doing chelation. When the words parted his lips, they went like this. No. Couldn't possibly have anything to do with it. No, chelation, we know it doesn't work. Petrified thought. How can you say that in the face of tangible evidence that it may have had an effect? Certainly this could have been a strange coincidence. Certainly placebo effect. I don't know how the hell your arteries would determine that. But isn't it just possible that maybe we're onto something here? That maybe we doctors that are proposing anti-aging therapies, bioidentical hormone therapies, chelation therapies, a different way to consider your health. Maybe there's some merit to all of this. And perhaps you should be allowed the freedom to make your own decisions. According to many in the mainstream of medicine, and in some states according to their departments of health, you're too stupid to make those decisions. You need to be protected from charlatans like me because we're going to mislead you. Now we'll get to my Lyme disease colleagues in a minute. But it goes something like this. In intellectual medicine, we have an IV infusion called the Time Machine. It's a nice little name I made up. I like the name of it. It includes some calcium EDTA to remove heavy metal and lead. It includes L-arginine for nitrous oxide and arterial health. It includes L-carnitine, which is a mitochondrial support. We know there's a theory regarding aging that mitochondrial degradation can contribute to that process. It has high-dose vitamins, high-dose vitamin C. In essence, it's a wonderful mix of safe vitamins and supplements and calcium EDTA for a range of health support benefit. We call it the Time Machine. I was criticized. In fact, a formal complaint was registered because this is hilarious. Because there is no evidence that patients actually become younger. Now pause and think. How knuckleheaded and concrete does an individual have to be to think that it's a literal time machine? That you get an IV infusion and you wake up somehow 10 years younger. Even if such a thing existed, I don't think I would want it. The point is time machine, in the way it's used in the setting of intellectual medicine, is meant to be used intellectually and not petrified, not with concrete thinking, right? If I said to you, the worm turns, you would think, okay, that's an expression that has meaning. It doesn't literally mean that he's watching a worm turn. If I said time machine IV, you wouldn't think that you're pumping in a date and literally going back in time and waking up sitting on top of a dinosaur. You would think appropriately that it is a description of a term not to be taken concretely. So we respect your intellect in making this discrimination. However, there truly are attributes of cellular anti-aging that have been shown to have value. How old are you chronologically? Okay, we know that age, right? I'm going to be 60. And May 24th, mark your calendars. You can wish me happy birthday. I feel great. I feel better today than I did at 50. Stronger, sharper mentally, leaner, just feel better. So did I experience anti-aging? Did I go back in time? You know, in some ways, I'm a living example of what anti-aging can do for people. Everything I talk about, I partake of. And one of the things I like to do to celebrate my birthday is go to the gym and see if I still have the ability to bench press 300 pounds. I know it's shallow, bear with me. It's one of my ways look, I can't run anymore, my legs aren't so hot, but I'm going to do that and I'll share that with you. We'll announce it. It'll be a Facebook Live event. See if I can get 300. I think I'm good for it. But the point of all this is that you don't want to be victimized by petrified thinking. I don't want to be victimized by that. If a credible study came out tomorrow indicating that chelation therapy had some adverse effect, I would need to reflect upon my currently held belief system. Let's turn then from chelation. How do you know if you need chelation? Check a pulse. If you're living in America, you can benefit from some form of heavy metal reduction, right? Lead, toxins, it's in the air, it's in the water, it's in the dirt. You're not dodging that bullet, people. Planet is polluted, and it gets in us, and the lead gets buried in our cells, and it can be corrosive to our brain and to our arteries. So heavy metal testing is a worthwhile evaluation. It can be done at intellectual medicine. There are some other doctors who do it. It is not adequate to do it in the blood. Heavy metal moves through the blood and goes in the cells. Ideally, and the best test we believe to be provocative urinary testing with an IV infusion to hook up the lead that's in the cells, pull it into the blood, and then filter it through the kidney. This is how we assess the total body load of lead. Look, I've had these conversations. If you feel great right now, that's good. It doesn't guarantee your brain's going to be with you when you're 60, 70, 80, and 90. Certainly, chelation doesn't guarantee that either, but I'm betting on reduction of lead as having merit. You want to wait for proof? The proof is in the living. The proof is in other people's experience. Go to the website, look at intellectual medicine, read what other people are living. If you're waiting for a double-blind, placebo-controlled study to come out of wherever university, it's not going to happen. We need to take evidence and intellectually apply it and not be victimized by petrified thought. Petrified thought is more dangerous to patients' health than the diseases in many cases. Chronic Lyme disease does exist. Now, many doctors don't believe it is a real thing. They think that the patients suffering from it are all psychologically impaired and need a therapist, not medical treatment. Chronic Lyme is a constellation of symptoms including fatigue, brain fog, chronic muscle and joint pain, loss of clarity of thought, physical weakness. These symptoms can span many years. And this is a real horrible dilemma. Petrified thought exists on both sides of this equation. So you have your conventional medicine. If you went to an infectious disease specialist, unless they're uniquely open to Lyme disease, what some people refer to as Lyme literate, They're going to tell you that chronic Lyme doesn't exist. They may acknowledge that there's something out there, post-Lyme syndrome, something that is making you feel like horrible, but they don't know what it is and they don't have anything to treat you with. That's a horrible place to be as a patient. How'd you like that? I'm sorry, Mrs. Smith, but this is as good as it gets for you. You do have something, we don't know what it is, and we can't help you. Enter intellectual thought, intellectual medicine. Intellectually speaking, that's not acceptable to me as a doctor. It shouldn't be acceptable to you as a patient. So on one side, we've got orthodox medicine, and you know, they're kind of afraid to talk to you about symptoms you may consider to be chronic Lyme because it's the third rail. Doctors who try to help patients who are suffering with chronic Lyme run the risk of censure by their Department of Health. These doctors are targets for special biased scrutiny and hyper inspection of their practice, their progress notes, their style of care, you name it. It doesn't take much for the weight of bureaucratic authority to crash down upon them. So doctors are afraid. The other part of this equation is really the chronic Lyme disease community itself. You have to be wary of the one-trick pony. What do I mean? If on the one hand, orthodox doctors don't acknowledge chronic Lyme as an entity, they can't help you. If there's a Lyme literate doctor who runs a Lyme disease center, that may be a great outlet for you. However, suppose what you have looks like chronic Lyme, has the symptoms of chronic Lyme, but isn't. You may get stuck with a different kind of petrified thought, which is an ongoing pursuit of treatment that's aiming at the wrong target. So if you're seeing a chronic Lyme doctor and you're getting better, awesome, march on. But if you've been there a few months and things aren't going forward, reconsider. I had a patient of mine for 1 year suffering with chronic Lyme, treated with antibiotics, going to multiple chronic Lyme disease centers. Ultimately came to see me, and I had the benefit of learning from what these other good doctors had done. And kudos to them for trying. The fact that it didn't get her where she needed to be is not an indictment of that effort or the intellectual thought that went behind it. It's just an acknowledgement that sometimes treating chronic Lyme doesn't work, especially if chronic Lyme's not the problem. Further testing and evaluation uncovered Bartonella, another form of vector-borne disease, an arthropod transmitted illness, and chronic mold exposure that caused chronic inflammatory response syndrome. That condition requires a different path of treatment. It does not respond to antibiotics. So the moral of the story is this. If you're not feeling great and you want to feel better, you have a right to pursue that avenue. But if the only avenue open is the orthodoxy of care, and if through their control, manipulation, and dominance of the bureaucracy of medicine, the departments of health, the universities, the dogma of medicine is able to put out the candle, is able to turn off the light of hope that exists in centers like intellectual medicine, that exists in the hearts and minds of doctors that are on functional medicine pathways, that respect and honor orthodox medicine, but are not limited to it. Reminds me of that old joke. Patient comes to see the doctor and says, "Doc, I hope you treat what I've got." And the doctor says, "I hope you have what I treat." This is one of the reasons why doctors love treating cholesterol. It's a numeric outcome. So chelation therapy, chronic Lyme disease, chronic fatigue, anti-aging. How about if you're 60 years old and you feel great? That's a wonderful place to be. However, it's not the final arbiter of health. We know what comes next. Hey, look, I get it. Today I'm 60, I feel magnificent. I'm not going to stay this way. Someday something will happen. And my goal is to make that day as far into the future and as little consequence as I possibly can. Heart disease, dementia, and cancer are the big three. These are the robbers of joy, vitality, and health. I maintain the time to act is when you feel great. Look for the carcinogens in your life. It's not enough to just say I don't smoke, hooray for me. Make your body weight perfect where it needs to be. Get your heavy metal tested. See if you've got cadmium load. See if you've got arsenic. See if there's gadolinium, lead. These things rot your health, but they do it slowly, right? Be proactive. Health is not the absence of disease. It's the presence of boundless energy. And by all means, get on your hormones. At some point in your life, you will either be on hormones or you'll suffer the consequence. Bioidentical hormones are the path to go. They need to be individualized. It is certainly not one treatment for everybody. Concrete thinkers, petrified thought says, hormones, oh my God, they're going to cause cancer and heart disease. Intellectual thinkers process new information and can balance risk and benefit. The benefit, when it comes to hormone replacement, enormously outweighs the risk. So we need to be our own advocate. Good for you. Today we live in the day of the enlightenment of medicine. You can go to the internet and you can Google chelation. Let me spell it. C-H-E-L-A-T-I-O-N. Chelation. With a C-H at the beginning. Google it. And the tactile, T-A-C-T, all capitals. Google it. Read for yourself. Challenge what I tell you. Don't accept dogma from anybody, not even me. Even though my dogma is correct and theirs is wrong, you should still do your own inquiry. You owe it to your own intellect. Look at anti-aging. Ask yourself, how do you want to age? The old-fashioned way? Or do you want to age with the benefit of all that science has to offer you to extend your youth, keep yourself vital? If you're listening to this, you've got chronic Lyme, or you think you may have it, it deserves to be pursued and analyzed. It is one of the most difficult things to do in medicine. We cannot lose our freedom, ladies and gentlemen, through incremental bureaucracies taking away avenues for us. One of the most ominous bureaucracies currently at play is our local departments of health. The democratic process has transferred so much power into their hands that by fiat they can decree certain forms of therapy to be intrinsically dangerous and therefore eliminate them from consideration. You should not have to go to Mexico or to some Caribbean island to get anti-aging and intravenous therapies. They should be allowed to flourish in the land of the free and the home of the brave and the home of the youthful and those that want to stay that way. So chelation therapy, we want you to look at, reconsider the role of the welfare state. Shannon's not with me this week, so I can't respond to you guys if you're texting or emailing, but I will respond after the show. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to be back again next week at 12 o'clock on Wednesday, picking up our conversation, intellectually speaking. But before we depart, just a word about the sports scene, a word about our beloved Red Sox. They will come to the top, rest assured. It's a long season, and time is the best ally for those Red Sox. Evaldi's elbow will get better. He had a chip removed, and it will improve. And thank goodness, football's on the horizon. How much do we miss that sport? I happen to love it. I love watching it and play. I love playing it. And I would absolutely have my child play it. In fact, he does. I think it's a safe sport. Head collisions notwithstanding. Head collisions are one of the potential contributors to brain compromise. But just as importantly is how you treat your brain between games. What do I mean? Chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, I believe is not just a consequence of head trauma and collisions, but rather how you treat your brain afterward. When I was in college, we'd play a football game on a Saturday. Half the team would go out and get drunk Saturday night. The other half wouldn't. I wonder how much lifestyle affects the brain evolution. Your brain just got traumatized by a football game. You don't pour alcohol all over it and expect it to do well. You infuse it with antioxidants. Why do certain NFL players have crystal clear brains and others don't? Franco Harris, the famous running back, Pittsburgh Steelers, had a very long career, took innumerable hits, crystal clear brain. You know, he was a nutrition major from Penn State. He's a really bright guy. And he knew ahead of his time the power of antioxidants, and he would take them in the form of blueberries as a regular part of his personal health maintenance. That's what I'm talking about with health, people. It's doing stuff now so your brain doesn't rot later. You take a hit on the head when you're 25, you don't get demented when you're 28. You have chronic lead exposure when you're 40, you don't get demented when you're 45. It comes decades later. So in the spirit of intellectually speaking and intellectual medicine, let's keep our eyes open, keep ourselves informed, continue to challenge our own petrified thought process where they exist, surrender our biases and our prejudices, and expose our brain to new thought by watching our show. And you can tune in on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, WPRO 99.7, and on Facebook Live. Thanks for tuning in. I'm wishing you guys 120 youthful years. I'm Dr. Steve Petteruti. This is Intellectually Speaking. Thanks for watching.